Hey everybody, Wes here. Now, if you're not like me and you weren't off in a different part of the country getting married, you would know that during the Xbox showcase, we were given the first of several new trailers for Halo Campaign Evolved. This one in particular gave us a first look at everything that's coming in these 3 new prequel missions, with the biggest reveals being Master Chief utilizing a set of Mark IV armor, Johnson wearing some freaking Orion armor, some type of prophet or minister and his unique faction being the antagonists of the story, and then space combat finally being confirmed to be coming back to Halo. So just an absolutely crazy amount of stuff all packed into just a few minutes. And while I am certainly late to the party, I did my absolute best to ignore other people's breakdowns and online chatter so that you guys could just get my own personal and raw thoughts about it. But then just as I started writing my notes for this video, Halo Studios then posted another trailer, which was a more broad story teaser for the entire game. For today's video, I'm just going to focus on that first trailer about those prequel missions, and I cannot understate how stunning these visuals are, and I cannot put into words how pumped I am for this game to release. But I imagine that you're all just as excited as me, so let's not waste any more time and dive right in. We open on a sequence of shots that cut to black between short clips taken from cinematics, starting with a shot of Marines running through the interior of the Pillar of Autumn, and as Sergeant Johnson paces between them, the iconic Halo alarm sound plays in the background. This clip is most likely taken from a scene that is more of a reimagining of the one where we first are introduced to, and see Johnson addressing the group of Marines in the hangar, which I could totally see being part of a proper suiting up sequence, kind of like we saw in some of that Halo 3 promotional material, if you know what I'm talking about. I'll throw it up on screen as well. But my God, this is literally the first shot, and it already looks so freaking good. Johnson and the Marines models look great, and I also really like this darker, more ominous look to the scene. It then cuts to a shot of a Covenant boarding craft latching onto the ship, and this looks like it resembles the design that we saw introduced back in Halo 2, and I just have to say I really like that contrast between its like purpley pinky lights and the black abyss of space behind it. It then cuts back to a group of Marines holding down a position with Johnson while under heavy plasma fire, and then it cuts to black and we hear our first actual audio of Sergeant Johnson.
You've heard the story. Halo.
Now, I'm not entirely sure if this is actually the David Scully, who might have been somehow talked out of retirement, as for over a decade he had entirely stepped away from the craft, but it definitely sounds like a different delivery than we're used to. And I don't really mean that in a bad or critical way, it just seems like maybe they went in a different direction. Honestly, it kind of sounds like they got the actor who had voiced the Halo Wars 2 Johnson leader character, who did a great job, but I guess we'll just have to see. It then cuts to a shot of the Bumblebee lifeboat as it departs from the Autumn and then drifts towards the Halo ring, which both the exterior of the ship and the Halo ring's outer shell are just absolutely beautiful. And just with these few shots, you can really see the Unreal Engine shining through and being put to work. And building off of the whole the storyline that Johnson just said, we get a quick montage of some clips that we've already seen, as well as a few new ones, like the Pelicans flying towards the silent cartographer island, and then Chief looking out into the ocean from the Pelicans troop bay, and then 2 quick shots of Chief right as he goes to board the lifeboat, and then what I think is him in front of one of the pulse generators, which would mean that the clip comes from the 2 Betrayals mission. Next, it cuts to a pair of hunters fighting Chief as he stands between the 2 of them, and then a Spirit dropship comes flying in to take them out. This clearly meant to be a new take on the cutscene from Truth and Reconciliation, where Keyes rams the dropship into the 2 hunters on that upper platform, while Chief somehow got aboard, even though he was, down on the lower levels. Also, too, it looks like they've added some blurriness to the visuals, or maybe some better reflective elements to the scenes, because there's this really nice glow around Chief in this shot, and then the explosions and projectiles just look so much better. Obviously, everything that we've seen in the past was all just a work-in-progress version of the game, but still, it's just really cool to see the clear progress made on the visuals. We then get a clip of Chief helping up a very, very different looking Captain Keyes, and then we get our first look at Cortana, who appears from a Covenant plinth in a form pretty different than anything we've ever seen in the previous games. And to be honest, she kind of reminds me of that version of Halsey we saw in the animated film The Fall of Reach, and I'm going to be frank, I don't really dislike this new look, as I was sort of expecting something a little bit different based on the concept art that we saw at HCS Worlds, but I will note that she is blue as opposed to like purple when we saw her originally shown to us in Halo Combat Evolved, or like that green color when she was interacting with Forerunner tech in the control room. But again, I don't really care that she's blue here, and I don't really mind if she's not going to have all of the different variation that we saw in the original game. But I will say, I think it's interesting that she is actually in hologram form here, because in the original game, she'd only ever projected herself in missions that took place in the autumn, or in the control room. And it's also cool that we see her standing behind this rotating circle thing, which I have to assume is like a visualization of the Covenant BattleNet, as during this prison breakout scene in the original game, she was never actually shown, just communicating to Master Chief through his comms. They're probably going to show Chief deploying her hologram pretty frequently, like we saw with Joy in Halo Infinite or with Isabel in Halo Wars, as it kind of makes it easier for the viewer to connect with the character, and it's also just a lot more entertaining than Chief just standing there and not really doing anything while Cortana talks to him. We then cut to a shot of Chief hopping into what I think is supposed to be the cockpit of the longsword at the end of the game, and then we get this crazy environmental shot as the ship flies away from the wreckage of the Pillar of Autumn. And just like we saw in that concept art of the ship from like a year ago, the ship is actually just torn apart. Like it actually crash landed and was completely destroyed in the process. This probably means that the Warthog run is going to be a lot more believable, or that random gap in the bridge section where we see Foehammer get shot down are actually going to make sense, and maybe even these various sections of the ship that we go through throughout the mission are going to be set up differently than we are used to. Cutting to the next shot, we get a straight-on view of Johnson's new look, which I think is actually very fitting for his character. And while I did say I went into this with as little external influence as possible, memes about him looking like Steve Harvey or just being old were unavoidable these past few days. To be fair, he does look much older than I think a lot of the newer fans are used to, especially when you look at the blur model that was introduced to Halo 2 Anniversary or in Halo Wars 2. But when you consider the fact that this dude is actually 78 years old, this new look makes total sense. And I was talking with a buddy about it too the other day, and he mentioned that even the original Halo CE through Halo 3 Johnson models looked like an older guy, and this version also kind of looks like the one from Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary anyway, so I don't know. I feel like people are just being nitpicky over his age and look, and it's just kind of silly and I think unwarranted. But this is where we get into the really good stuff with this trailer, because it then cuts to a shot taken from the new prequel missions, which are now confirmed to be set 1 year before the events of Halo CE. And they actually added a section onto the Campaign Evolved, webpage on Halo Waypoint that gives us a description of these prequel missions. So let me just tell you what the exact story is going to be, and then I'll break down the shots as we go. But here is that description, word for word. Set 1 year before the events of Halo Combat Evolved, Operation Meteorite follows the Master Chief and Sergeant Avery Johnson as they infiltrate a Covenant agricultural ship holding orbit over the glassed human colony of Promise in search of data that could lead to the Covenant's fabled homeworld of High Charity. Over the course of 3 action-packed missions, the heroic duo must battle sacrosanct warriors, liberate UNSC Marines, and brave a series of bizarre experiments conducted under the watchful gaze of the mysterious Stanchion Minister of Harmony. Okay, so with that out of the way, in this first shot we see a spirit flying into frame and towards that Covenant agricultural ship that sits in the orbit of this now glassed planet of Promise. We then watch as the ship lands in a hangar bay with several grunts and jackals waiting below, these enemies being part of that entirely new faction led by the Minister of Harmony, all of which have unique armor that we've really never seen before. You can see the jackal has white and gold armor with a massive plumage of feathers on their head, while there are 2 variants of grunts, one of which has some sort of ceremonial helmet and battle harness, while the other 2 have, I think, purple or pink colored armor with some cloth wrappings around their arms. It seems like they're awaiting the arrival of this ship, but as the Spirit's drop bay hatch opens, the Chief steps out wearing a variant of the Mark IV Mjolnir armor, wielding a battle rifle. It then cuts to a montage of gameplay as Chief battles through what I think would be the interior of the ship, fighting through more of these grunts and jackals, the latter utilizing the new needle rifle, until we cut back to the halls of the ship, or what I think is actually an armory, and then we get a glimpse of a white and gold armored elite that has a design reminiscent of the one elite variant that kind of looked like a spade helmet presented in the original game. But also, Chief is seen utilizing a brute plasma rifle here, and there are a couple of Marines who you can see are part of this fight as well, so more new weapons being shown off here, and then we get to see some of those Marines that were supposedly supposed to be liberating. We then see a shot of the player using the fuel rod cannon, another new addition to CE's sandbox, to take down a Wraith, and the explosion effects here just look amazing. We then cut to a shot of Johnson walking up with a case that holds an M99 stanchion, which, if you're not familiar, is pretty much the equivalent to a Gauss cannon, but in the form of a rifle. And this is also a weapon that is important to the history of Johnson, as it was one that he had used during his time as an Orion super soldier in the pre-Covenant era, notably during Operation Kaleidoscope. Also, speaking of his time as an Orion soldier, in these missions, it looks like he's actually going to be wearing a suit of Orion armor, which I don't think, other than multiplayer armor in MCC and Halo Infinite, we've ever actually seen worn by an Orion candidate in Halo media. So this is freaking awesome on a number of levels. It then cuts to an interior shot of what I think might be a temple of sorts, where a duo of elites wearing some sort of gold ceremonial armor are dueling one another, being cheered on by some grunts. We then see that Johnson is just off nearby, lines up a shot with his stanchion, and then opens fire on them as Chief begins to engage from below. He uses that same fuel rod cannon to kill one of these elites, and then a ghost, and then he switches to the new energy sword to cut down the other elite. This being the first shot I think that we've seen of a player using the new sword, and honestly, I don't hate it. I do think it looks a little bit different. It's got like rolling bands going through it. It looks like it's kind of got like that plasma screen TV effect with like the rolling bands or whatever. But again, I don't hate it. It just looks different, and yeah, I can't wait to use it in Halo CE. I also want to note that the armor worn by these elites kind of reminds me of the armor worn by legendary Xtan Jar Watinree, or at least the armor that he had been depicted as wearing in some of the only art we have of him, having that sort of 2-point top on the helmet and then that half-moon-like ring that is just beneath it. The shoulders, maybe not so much, but I do think they kind of look similar. But I do have to say, I find it interesting that his armor shares similarities with this faction, and I'll touch on that here in a moment, but I wonder if they have any relation to each other. We then cut to another wide exterior shot that gives us a better look at the surrounding area, and you can see off in the background, there's this wall with these pylons that jut up, meaning that everything we're seeing in here is actually just within the circular dome or structure of the ship. So, like in the lore, this ship may be acting as like a hunting preserve or a battleground of sorts. We then see another shot with both Johnson and Chief working together against Covenant troops, and we get a hands-on look at the new needle rifle. This looks fantastic, and it seems pretty true to the design that we saw in Halo Reach. But things then get really freaky, as Johnson puts it, as they come into an area lined with these pods filled with Sangheili. They all seem to be members of the Sangheili phenotype that we saw canonized in Halo 4 and 5, and it almost looks like they might be slightly deformed or have these like tumorous growths on them. So maybe the elites that are in these pods are the experiments that the mission description was talking about. And that's not too far of a stretch, because in the lore, we know that there is actually a Covenant equivalent to the Spartans, which are the Prelates. Stanchion, who had been genetically augmented, utilizing technology really only known to have existed within the Sacred Promissory on High Charity, or on some agricultural ships, which, hey, this is one of those. So that means that this Minister of Harmony may actually be trying to create his own army of super soldiers, much like humanity's Spartans, hinting that he may be a part of the group known as the Ministry of Preparation, who specialized in bioengineering. But this speculation now brings me back to Xtan Jar Watinree, who was massive by Sangheili standards, standing 11.5 feet tall. That's taller than any brute we've ever seen in the games, and almost as tall as a hunter. And while his size could have certainly just been a genetic abnormality, I wonder if maybe Xtan has connections to the Ministry of Preparation, or this Minister of Harmony, being a product of his augmentation experiments. I don't know, that's probably just a shot in the dark, but it would be kind of a cool tie-in to his character, and a cool reason for his crazy size. Next up, we finally get our first look at the Stanchion behind these experiments, the Minister of Harmony. He is not to be confused with any of the High Prophets or any other pre-existing character, as he is entirely new to Halo. We then see a cool lineup of all of these new enemy types, and we get a really good look at them all. You can see the ceremonial cloths hanging from their armor, the ornate helmets and armor designs, and we get a really good close-up of the Stanchion's features. It almost looks like maybe he has some sort of specialized helmet on as well that has some like tubing coming out of the back that plugs into his chair, which might be important here in a second. The next shot is Johnson and Chief with their weapons raised, and Johnson fires off a round. Now, there is a bit of a jump cut here, and the following shot is of a brute who is wearing some sort of device on his armor. The way that they set this up is sort of implying that Johnson shoots this device, and as a result, causes the brute to enter a rage and then turn on the other Covenant troops. This makes me wonder if the device that's on his chest is some sort of controller or transmitter device that enables someone to remotely control the brute. Most likely the Minister, which might be why he has that sort of unique helmet. But when this device gets destroyed, it causes the brute to go into a Berserker mode due to a sudden release of energy, or some side effect of a reverse engineered Forerunner technology being discharged, which actually sounds like a kind of fun mechanic. And to actually have enemies go completely feral and attack anything that moves is very much in line with what I think a Berserker brute should actually be, unlike what we saw in Halo Infinite. And also too, before I completely lose this thought, and this is completely off script now, this brute and the idea of these bioengineered Covenant soldiers reminds me of that Halo Legends short, I think Odd One Out. Now, I don't remember the brute's name. It was like Pluton or something, but I think one of the High Prophets commissioned a Jiralhane super soldier who had these like electricity or energy powers. And I'm pretty sure that that short was not canon, but I wonder if that sort of inspired this idea, or in like any capacity was something that they had pulled from for this mission. I don't know, bit of a tangent there, sorry guys. We then cut to a shot with Johnson and Chief riding some sort of gondola through the ship as they're being shot at by more Covenant forces. They then try to board, and we get to see our first look at Chief using the newly added brute Spiker, the design of which is pretty different but also familiar to what we're used to, although I will say it kind of reminds me of the Halo Wars 2 aesthetic more than anything, having some more bits, here and there. We then get a look at some white and gold hunters rushing into the area to try and take on Chief and Johnson, and these, I've probably said this like 20 times in the video now, but these guys look so freaking good, man. And while it is cool that like 2 seconds later we see Chief using an SMG, when I watched this the first time, I just kept scrubbing back to get another look at the hunters, because man, they look freaking cool. Things then speed up a bit, and we get a montage of the space battle sequence from the campaign, which is actually going to be from the perspective of a Seraph fighter as we navigate the nearby debris field and neutralize the ship's defenses. We then cut to a montage of shots that are taken directly from various cutscenes from the campaign, giving us a glimpse of the new model for the Truth and Reconciliation, which I think looks a little too bulbous and kind of squished for me, but hey, that's just me. It literally looks like if you were like in Photoshop and you were scaling it and you just squished it in. I don't know, it looks kind of funny, but that's just me. We then get a quick shot of Chief alongside Foehammer, and then a clip of Guilty Spark and Chief meeting for the first time after he had re-emerged from the flood-infested facility. And it seems like Chief is just down on the ground this time, and not up on the platform like in the original game. Right after this, there is this really sexy shot of Chief laying down some cover fire as he goes to board the lifeboat, and he does this like slight movement to change the trajectory of his shot while firing, and I don't know why, but this really stuck out to me. We then switch to a shot with Chief back in his Mark IV armor during the prequel missions, and he knocks down this grunt who was holding a plasma grenade, which is then thrown in the air as he plops to the ground, but in a smooth motion, Chief grabs the grenade and then throws it at another one in front of them, which was absolutely hilarious to me for some reason, but also just awesome. Although I will say, I don't really know why the plasma grenade wasn't sticky, even though it was activated. So maybe we can get some explanation on how plasma grenades work in the future, because that seems a little different than what I'm used to. And then we go back to another shot of Chief fighting that same pair of hunters from the beginning, and then we cut to one of the Sentinels attacking him on the Autumn's Bridge, but then we get this really cool shot of the Warthog run from the final mission. And if you take a closer look, you'll actually see some Warthogs up in like some racks above the driving path, which makes me think that the environment that we're going to drive through throughout the run is going to be a lot more complex this time around. But also, if you look closely on the left-hand side of the screen here, I think that's an Ultra if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if this means in general that we'll be seeing Ultras throughout the campaign, but it is yet another example of how encounters might feel different throughout the game. The trailer then ends on a fun little moment between Johnson and Chief, which I think speaks for itself.
Chief, you ever get tired of being the strong, almost silent type?
No.
But with that, the trailer comes to an end, and we finally get confirmation on the game's release date, being July 28th, 2026. So really, we're only a month or so away from finally getting our hands on this thing. Now, as I was finishing up the video, I actually wanted to re-record this outro because Halo Studios posted like 3 videos today, being, June 10th, and apparently a bunch of people also got early access to a demo build. I personally was not one of them. I was not lucky enough to get a copy of the game or a preview or anything like that from Halo Studios, which is a huge bummer, but I am planning on pre-ordering the game anyway, so that I can play it 5 days earlier on July 23rd, which is also supposed to give me some various cosmetics as well. I didn't really plan on talking about those, but if you did want to learn more about the different versions of the game and what all of the add-on bonuses would be depending on what tier or version of the game you're going to get, you can see that here on screen now, or you can check out the Halo Waypoint website, which I will link to the description in this video. And I know I already said it a million times, and I know I went on some lore tangents, but these graphics are just stunning. The cinematic work is just superb, and I am just so excited to replay the story all over again with all these new little twists, encounter reworks, and everything else that is coming with it. And hey, if you haven't already, please be sure to like this video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. With Halo finally coming out of its dry spell and these new prequel missions coming with a ton of new story and lore, you'll definitely want to stick around for more Halo summaries, updates, and breakdowns just like this one. And I think you guys should definitely leave me a comment on what trailer or news around Halo Campaign Evolved that you would like me to cover in the future. Just be sure to let me know down below. But that is all for today. I think there's like 4 other freaking trailers to go through now, or like gameplay and stuff like that. I don't know. There's so much happening right now, and I'm just trying to get caught up. So until next time, I will see you in the next video.